Hey there, internets. So, looking at doing a election post-mortem. A lot of people started them. I wanted to have everything, where we actually can step back, think about it, put more thought into it. So this is going to be kind of a multi-part series. I'm not sure exactly how many, because what's going on? People are saying it was because of Trump, too much anti-Trump vote. Other people are saying it was the abortion issue, with Roe v. Wade getting overturned, was a lack of strategy, lack of leadership, bad candidates. It's a big blame game. Everybody's targeting everybody else instead of saying, what did I do? Now, I would submit that it's all of these and none of these at the same time. One by itself would not have necessarily made such a difference because it was not nearly the red wave predicted. Now, the Republican plus was basically Republican plus 3, which is what the polls showed. But everyone said, oh, well, that once you figure in, decided it's going to be bigger. Well, they didn't break. They basically broke right down the middle. We ended up with Republicans plus 3. So on this video, I'm just going to step back and say, let's just step back and look objectively at the Trump as a factor. So we have, when I looked at that, all of the links will be in the description below. I use Ballotpedia and the Reuters election results and Real Clear Politics election results, so people can see get down into the maps if they want. So go ahead and open up the links in the description below. Do like and share this with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't. So, when I look back into this, the question is Trump a net positive or a net negative? He definitely draws people out, but does he draw more people out that want to oppose him than people that want to side with him? And that's the real question. You look at voter turnout, and every year, and this kind of complicates it, and there's several complicating factors, but you look at historical voter turnout, on average, including this past year, and to come up with a voter turnout number, I worked on the assumption that voter base is the same as it would be based on as it was 2 years ago. I'm sure it's probably gone up just a little bit, but based on who actually came out, I used that as a baseline because I couldn't find a voter turnout, so it's probably a little lower than this. But if you take everything since the 2002 midterm turnouts have averaged 42.6%. This year I calculated it as being 45%, 45.3%. Last year, or 2 years ago, during the presidential run, it was 66.77, higher than you've ever seen. So it makes it hard to compare previous years. But if you look at 2018, if you look at it in terms of voter turnout, 2018 had a 50% voter turnout and had more voters. So as far as turning out the vote, both parties, Democrats were at 63% of what Biden got, 63.1. Republicans were at 73.3. Well, in terms of averages, when you compare the out-of-party vote to what their prior presidential candidate had gotten, so in 2002 to what Bush got, 2006 to what Bush got, 2010 to what McCain got, and of course 2018 to what Trump got, Republicans pulled in 80.9%. That is the outlier. That's way higher. The average for the in-power party is 64.3. Democrats were down as a percentage of their presidential candidate over a percentage point for what compared to the vote, the number of, as far as the percentage of the votes that their candidate got. So they got 63.1% of the votes that Biden got, but the average is 64. Trump got 70. So this year, Republicans got 73.3% of what Trump got. And of course, Biden had 7 million more votes. Now, they still, the overall count for Republicans was 50.7 to 45 or 48.7 for Democrats, as far as how the vote split. But that's not quite a historic low. The historic low is 2002, where we had a special circumstance. And that was when Democrats actually outright lost the midterms to Republicans. But it was the second smallest. The average, conveniently, is 50.7, which I'm not certain I have that calculated right, but I'm going to go with it. I'm not double checking my number now, because for that 45%, the high number is 53.4. So Republicans were on the low end of were historically average for the out of power vote percentage, but everything else other than that one outlier, which really does pull it down. 45.2 for Democrats that year, and I didn't go Republican versus Democrat. I went out of power versus in power, because that's changed every time the president's party changes. So, and you do see the last couple of elections, you see a rising amount of turnout. But it really didn't rise until 2018. So Democrats need 92% of what Hillary got, but with higher voter turnout, you got to wonder where Democrats won in the House and Republicans won in the Senate in 2018. Did Trump not bring out more detractors, people that hated the guy, to vote against him in 2018 and possibly this time? He's average. Now, so when you look at that, what do you get? And that's just kind of some generic historical ballot. The outliers looking at that. Trump was in line with historic averages. Saying that this guy is a big pull, that's hard. Looking at historical averages, you can't really say that. Granted, you got, the 2018 Democrats are really an outlier because Trump is the third highest. 2010, the out-of-party power, when we all won with Obama in office, was 74.8, and that's the next highest after 2018. So that's just some thoughts to that in historical terms. When you look, you break down, you have to look at the House races. People talk about what's Trump's endorsement record. Well, if you're endorsing a bunch of people that are in races you're going to win anyway, you go to a heavy red district and Trump makes an endorsement, it's really kind of an outlier. One thing I always complained about with the NRA is they would endorse in races where they were likely to win anyway and not make an endorsement where it was questionable or where they were likely to lose, which bumps up their endorsement records. It's something that really irritated, because I'm pro-gun, but I want to know the real numbers, not just see, oh, you guys didn't bother to endorse this guy that got an A rating against an F Democrat in a blue district. And the problem this year with looking at House races, for or against Trump, you have to say, we just had redistricting. These districts change shape. To use Illinois 17 as an example, in Illinois 17, Trump won in 2020 with 49.7% of the vote. And he won in 2016 with an even lower percentage. So he won that district. But it was changed to be so much more democratic that the Republican underperformed Trump by a good 4 points. Or they lost by 4 points. He underperformed Trump by negative 1.7. It was a not rated race. And so I looked at, there was 23 races that I looked at where it was no further apart than about 4 points. Because, you know, a 2-point swing one way or the other could make the difference. And, you know, a few thousand votes here, a few thousand, some of those were close races. The average vote was the Republican winning by 2 points. The under over Trump, where did I have it, was 0.24. The average spread is 0.24. He averaged 2 points. They overperformed Trump by 2 points. If they're overperforming Trump when he's not on the ballot, you really got to wonder if he's really a draw. And in those 24 close races, 7 of 9 that were endorsed won, but only and 12 of 13 were won by Republicans. But he only had 9 of those that were endorsed. And these were very, very close races. So one race, I mean, Lauren Boebert, Colorado 3, they tried to reconstruct her district to get rid of her. Less than 600 votes separated the two candidates, and she won. In Colorado 8, it was 48.4% for the Democrat, 47.7% for the Republican, and you had a third party. And so you have to ask that question: did Trump's endorsement matter or not? And that was a no Trump endorsement, but did people associated with it? There were people that were associated with Trump. In Washington 3, you had a Republican insurgent. Trump won that district by 53.5%. The incumbent was pro-impeachment, defeated in the primary, had won the previous time in 2020. Jamie Herrera Butler won by plus 12.8% percentage point spread. That was a likely R that was lost, 50.2 to 49.2. The Republican, whose name escapes me, who was running in that race, Trump's endorsed candidate to defeat her, lost by over 4 points, or underperformed him by over 4 points. If you're underperforming him and you're that associated, did he really help? We have to ask that. So the House of Representatives is kind of a weird thing, but I can't see a net positive in this case. If he'd been a net positive in the House races, and again, the House of Representative races were in some cases gerrymandered. Illinois is 17 looks like this thing of spaghetti going through the state, and some of those races that Democrats won were in other places. So you go to some of the critical ones, and these are the House of Representative races. Most people don't watch. If you live here in Washington, you watched Washington 3. You watched Washington 8, which was not a blowout, but still fair. It wasn't near as competitive, and they were associating Trump with Matt Larkin, even if he had I don't remember whether he actually had an endorsement or not. I did not happen to look at it, but they were associating him with it. So you go to the critical losses. All but one of the critical races, and these are statewide. I only counted senators and governors. I didn't get into lieutenant governors and attorney generals and all that, because there's so many and it's hard to say. You can get into individual aspects of races that you're just not going to know. You get into those 8 races. Now, the generic congressional ballot matters, but those get really particular. And you go through them. In the Pennsylvania Senate race, you could certainly argue issues with Mehmet Oz, but how did John Fetterman beat that? Trump had 48.8%, and Dr. Oz got only 46.5%. Dr. Oz got 72.3%. Trump certainly didn't pull out his base for him. He didn't even get to the average. And that one was a super close race, but Democrats pulled out 80%. Now, these are cases where strategy, this is where you say candidate quality, strategy, the abortion issue, all could have been at play here as well. Arizona governor, which is being challenged the correct way, and it's matters of fact. I am not opining on that. We're just going to go with the fact that as it stands in this moment, Katie Hobbs is the winner. As much as I like Carrie Lake, we're going to work on the assumption that she doesn't overturn things because it's a tall order. They got more than Trump's percentage. Trump got 49%. Katie Hobbs outperformed him by 0.7%. Was he really a drag? You could argue certainly not. With Blake Masters, he underperformed Trump in Arizona. Now, there you have two races statewide. One does better than the other. You could certainly argue other factors. This is why stepping back, even though I would prefer somebody other than Trump for 2024 to be the Republican nominee, stepping back and being objective. Here you have two very close races, and one does better than the other. For some reason, I did not include the Nevada Senate race. However, if I go to that, or the Nevada, in my spreadsheet, which isn't publicly available, that's why I said open the links. The Nevada Senate race, Trump had gotten 47.7%, and the Republican candidate got 48%. The Republicans won the governor, though, with 48.8%. You had a third party in there pulling off of 1.5%. The Democrats got 47.3%, so I probably should have included that in my spreadsheet, and I neglected to do so. But just less than 1% shift. One does well, one does not. Georgia Senate. I based this on the first round, not the runoff. Trump brought in 77% of what he got. Biden brought in 79%. Big game situation there. But again, we ended up with a loss, and Trump had lost that state by the narrowest of margins. Yet Brian Kemp wins. Brian Kemp, you could argue there were some strategies there that worked for him. Maybe some candidate quality. Kansas governor. This is one that, how did the GOP lose this? And arguably there's other factors. There was a third party and an abortion ban in there. The third party, the Senate candidate won with 60%. Yet with a third party candidate in there pulling a big chunk out, who was running to the right of the Republican that was in there, Republicans lost that one. They only got 61% of what Trump got in that state. The Democrats got 64% of what Trump. Excuse me. The Democrats got 86% of what Biden got. 86.6. Looking at the wrong column there. So, and Democrats in Pennsylvania got 97% of what Biden got. So there's you could certainly argue that a lot of anti-Trump feelings, especially in Pennsylvania with John Fetterman. I was looking at the wrong call earlier. Wisconsin governor. This was one where people thought Republicans would take it back. Democrats won with a good almost 3.5 point spread. And yet the Republican underperforms Trump substantially. So Trump was certainly not helping him. Trump got 48.8 in Wisconsin. The Republican gubernatorial candidate gets 47.8. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, however, won. These again were all endorsed by Trump. So, out of all of those really critical, high-profile cases, I can't see that Trump was a net positive. I cannot say, though, that he was absolutely a negative, but I lean that way. I don't think he's helping, especially when he draws it to him. He makes it about him. He's not saying, this guy's great, this guy's great, making it about everybody else. You see how he reacted when Governor DeSantis did so well. And people were talking about Governor DeSantis possibly running in 2024 and it being questioned. So, and for some reason my TV likes to turn on and on. But I can't say this guy's a net positive. Net negative? Maybe. But I can't see that he's drawing people out way in excess. He may be drawing people out that dislike him to the point where they'll vote for somebody else. And of course, you know, some of these side-by-sides, candidate quality in the particular issues or the particular opposition could be certainly an argument. But when in Pennsylvania, which was one of the high-profile cases, you can argue that Mehmet Oz was a bad candidate, but you can't argue that Fetterman was any better. John Fetterman's any better of a candidate when the man could hardly speak. So I gotta say, he's somewhere between. He's not a positive, and I think it would be wise to really rethink whether Republicans want this guy for 2024 on the idea that we want to win. That does not mean picking somebody that's not a conservative. We have DeSantis. I know a lot of people are angry at Brian Kemp, but there is Governor Brian Kemp. I like him because he addressed the voter security issues without being all about how unfair 2020 was, as Trump keeps going on and on and on. There's Abbott. I think Josh Hawley's a little bit wet behind the ears. Ted Cruz. We have options. The Republican Party has other options other than Trump. Let the guy be a kingmaker. His age is a concern. And you take him out of it, suddenly the Democrats lose all that we dislike Trump anger, and someone says, you know what? I didn't like Trump, but I can go for this other guy, even though he's maybe even more conservative. So that's what I have for you. I'll be trying to get some more stuff out between now and end of the year. A lot of the well-known commentators aren't putting stuff out the next week. I'm going to try and get some stuff out. And I probably won't get out a Saturday Night Rant because it's Christmas Eve. I've always tried to avoid doing political posts on certain holidays, and that's one of them. Christmas, we can all just be people. So until then, you all have a Merry Christmas. If you're a Democrat, a Merry non-religion specific holiday. And we'll see you sometime after Christmas. Take care.